Ladies and gents, welcome to the video. I'm GetGoodGuy, and yesterday I posted a video on this channel for Battlefield 5, kind of another funny video, and I then went over to Twitter and said I expect really poor viewership on this video the day after BF5 is dead day, but I wanted to do it anyway to test it. Then afterwards I added underneath, I should have just done a video ranting about everything that went wrong with Battlefield 5, and then after that I added, why don't I just do that? So that's what I'm going to do today. This is kind of my catharsis or my closure for this game now it's basically coming to an end early. It's my chance to get off my chest everything I can think of for why the game ended up like this and for why it was so frustrating and rage-inducing to cover this game and have this stuff in my head every day. You know, as a creator, I had to be aware of all its failings constantly and why it was so hard to swallow all of the hate that came my way as I tried to honestly cover the game for you guys. So if you don't want to hear negativity or whatever, then just go. This is not the video for you. I'll see you in another one soon. And I'm not getting new footage for this because I'm sure you understand I don't want to get on and play BF5 for an extended amount of time right now. I'm sure you're going to find that perfectly reasonable. So it's old footage re-recorded. If it looks bad, that's why. I don't think it's going to matter today. So in the comments, you can agree or disagree and let me know of any points you think I missed. I'm not going to edit this very much. Let's just get into this. There's going to be a lot. We'll go with the reveal trailer, which actually is the start of everything. Pretty much at least. The reveal trailer did not get us off to a good start at all, and DICE completely missed the tone that they should have been going for a World War II game. We all know this now. The game basically didn't deliver a World War II experience in the way that the vast majority of people would want it to have done. The reveal trailer was the very start of this, featuring a woman front and center with a prosthetic arm, without it being clear where she was from or what was going on. Well, she was British actually, it seemed, which didn't really make any sense in the grand scheme of things. And this dusted off the whole thing of we didn't know, and DICE seemingly didn't know, if the game was going to be realistic or not, if it was an alternate representation, if it was the often untold stories. They basically threw away everything they did with BF1 and gave us some fancy version of World War II in BF5, which didn't work, and the whole thing of if you don't like it, don't buy it, and my daughter said she wanted to play as a female and all that stuff. It was a terrible, terrible start. At the beginning, I didn't know how bad that was going to be, to be honest with you, and I said, look, if the game is good, none of this stuff's really going to matter. Let's not overreact. Let's not just get mad because women are in the game, but I was wrong. I was wrong because I was naive. I didn't expect all of the inaccuracies to be just plainly inaccurate. I didn't expect the game to be what it ended up being. I had more faith in DICE, so my failing was expecting more when I had no reason to. Then we had the release schedule was confusing. It needed a table to explain it. If you had Origin, it was out at this point. If you had Premium, it was out at this point. If you didn't, it was out at this point. There was early access for this point. No one seemingly really knew what was going on. It seems a minor thing now, but I'm just going to go through everything because when you put it all together, it's a big deal, and it shows why we ended up with Battlefield 5 being a failure that was ended early. The game itself was delayed. I don't know if anyone can remember that, and we all kind of thought, well, if it's delayed so the game is better when it comes out, great. We now know the game was delayed because it was just a horror show, and even when it came out, it was basically not in a fit state. This game has remained in an alpha or beta state for basically its entire existence. It just wasn't ready even after those delays, and I would say still isn't ready now. I think if you release this game as it is right now, I guarantee you a lot of people would see it as, oh, it's not where it needs to be because it's just released. Given time, it will probably get to where it needs to be, but no, it's been a year and a half and we're still at that stage. It never got to the point that we expected it to be at for a AAA title. You can throw into the mix there bugs. There have been an abundant amount of bugs in this game, innumerable. I could do a huge list of bugs alone. All games have bugs, but this game had bugs, like so many bugs. And there's still bugs now. People still find bugs every day they've not seen before. Whether it be the not being able to die when you're downed, or not being able to revive, or not having a gun, just all sorts of things. Honestly, just a totally unacceptable amount of bugs in this game. There was then the terrible PR, like for example, a big example, which I've talked about before, when DICE had their internal party or whatever, and they mocked the community with all those statements on the screen about Genderfield 5 and all this, and they claimed they were going to be on the right side of history. That was just dumb. I don't know if the person that released those pictures of it was stupid or trying to be kind of like a whistleblower. If they were releasing those pictures not realizing the problem it was going to cause, then that was dumb. If they released those pictures because they wanted to show the top toxic attitude, the terrible culture that exists within DICE right now, then fair play. You know, cool, thanks for doing that for the community, I guess. But terrible PR has been a hallmark of Battlefield 5. Whether it be the stuff I mentioned earlier of don't like it, don't buy it, whether it be this party, whether it be the insulting change they've put in place or the lies that we've got in community broadcasts, again, just a huge list could be formed just on that. The PR, or public relations if you're not aware, has been abysmal. Some of the worst I've ever seen, up there rivaling probably Fallout 76. Then there was also TTK debacle number 1, as I'm going to call it. So in 2018, when they changed the time to kill in the game for the entire game apart from one playlist or one mode or whatever it was, claiming it was for the betterment of the game and that people wanted this, and no they didn't. It ruined the game. It was awful for most people. And even if you didn't think it was bad, DICE just coming in weeks after release and being like, yeah, we're going to change the entire way the game feels now, was not a good move when you're basically forcing it on everyone. And it was just before Christmas when they were hoping to get a whole load of new players because the game already wasn't in a great state at that point, and they knew that there was large player churn, and they were blaming it on people dying too quickly and all that kind of stuff, rather than the game being a shit show, which it was, and arguably kind of still is. So the community got irate, they changed the TTK back and said basically, well, we won't do that again, we're sorry. We'll come back to this later. What about the content delays? How much content was delayed? Whether it's a map that came out 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, something like that after it's supposed to, delays to stuff we saw in the reveal trailer, delays to promised modes, so many content delays. I get that sometimes stuff isn't ready, but the whole of Battlefield 5 wasn't ready. And so the amount of delays was just unacceptable, and of course people aren't going to be hyped about your game when they have to wait this long for stuff and then not knowing if it's even going to turn up, or when they finally do get it, if it's even going to be good. That's like game development 101, to be honest with you. If you're going to deliver something, make sure it's good, whether it's late or on time, but especially if it's late, because compounding the issue of it being bad and late, that's not going to make anyone happy. What about the terrible netcode? We all know it's been kind of bad, or most people know it's been kind of awful. You know, shoot people first and still die, or come around the side of someone and shoot them in the side and they're shooting straight on but you're still dying. It makes it very hard to enjoy at times. Nothing seems to line up. Throw into that the lag and the terrible ping and whatever, and you've got an experience that you can't really trust a lot of the time. Moving on, we've got missed deadlines, which is kind of like content delays, but saying we're going to get something here and then not getting it was a frequent thing. The TTK debacle number 2, so we can come back to that now, in 2019, where DICE decided to go back on the we won't do this again thing and change the TTK of the game. Now, they claimed it was a weapon rebalancing, but when you rebalance basically everything in the game, that's a TTK change if basically almost everything ends up killing more slowly. And again, it was just before Christmas when I'm sure they wanted to bring in more new players, and then it ended up being kind of changed back, but not really, and we've got a worse version of what we initially had, but at least it's kind of back to where it was. But no, DICE don't get a thank you for that. You don't get to screw with the TTK of the game multiple times, make the game basically worse multiple times, and have everyone go, oh, thanks for changing it back, DICE, that's really good. No, you don't do that. It's ridiculous. It should never have been done in the first place. Now, what about game performance issues? Stuttering and freezing and crashing and the game not starting and not being able to join your teammates and servers closing and whatever else. Completely unacceptable. Like the assignments problem. The assignments would cause the game to stutter. I don't know if that's been announced, actually. That's something I know. If you didn't know, and if I wasn't supposed to say that, I've said it now, screw it. I'm not going to edit this very much. The game can't handle the assignments very well. That's why it sometimes stutters and stuff. And that's why you can only have 4 running at a time, because if they had them all active, the game basically wouldn't run. Yes, this is a AAA title released in 2018 with those problems. Remember BF1 had an issue with the assignments as well, and it made the game stutter and all that? Yeah, it never went away. And yet, even with those problems, they still implemented the assignments in this fashion in this game because, I don't know, maybe their brains weren't working properly. Either fix it or change the system. Don't just put it in and be like, oh yeah, it still doesn't work. Guess we'll release the game. Onwards. Selling free skins for money. Don't know who remembers this. Skins that were out for nothing at one point would then go away because they made a mistake or something, then be put back into the armory but for a price, and this happened once or twice, or I think there were 3 or 4 issues with the store, to be honest. Things that weren't supposed to be out were out, or things that weren't supposed to be free were free, or things that weren't supposed to cost money, or just embarrassing. Again, this is really simple stuff that they just couldn't get right, or they just lied about it. I don't know, one of the two. What about inaccurate roadmaps? That's always good. Getting a roadmap for what you're going to get, and then it turns out to not be correct because they're on a live service and they don't have to stick to it. A little pointer, roadmaps are there to keep people interested. Roadmaps are there to let people know why they should stick around. Roadmaps roadmaps are there to get people hyped. Roadmaps that then aren't correct, where you don't get some of the content, or the content is late, or the content is different, essentially has the opposite impact. You stop encouraging people to play, and you stop them playing. I would imagine that doesn't need explaining, but how you've gone about crafting the game kind of leads me to believe that maybe you do need it explaining. And I'm not really talking to individual devs here, people doing the, let's say, the coding work, however you want to put it, the people actively working on the day-to-day. But the management, you're an embarrassment, and I know for a fact some of you don't know what you're doing. I can't say everything I know. I'm trying really careful not to land anyone in trouble here, but some people literally aren't qualified to have the job they're doing at DICE in a high position because I personally know more about playing a multiplayer shooter than they do. Please just let that sink in. Onwards, the total waste that was Firestorm. Criterion did a really good job on Firestorm. It was wasted and handed back to DICE because the game's not free to play when it absolutely should be, releasing a battle royale in a game that the wider gaming populace has no interest in is stupid. If it was free to play, maybe people would have played it, maybe that would have incentivized people to play BF5 as well. But doing it the other way around, again, really stupid, and this was brought up by multiple creators even before Firestorm was released, myself included, but nobody listened again, and look what happened, it died, much like Battlefield 5. Great work. Also the fact that Firestorm basically wasn't supported, didn't really get many substantial updates, doesn't work properly, had lots of hackers in it, the looting system was never properly sorted out even after we were told it would be, and now you can start a Firestorm game with what, 2 people in it or something? Just, again, the word embarrassing comes to mind. Oh, and teamers. People teaming up in there and seemingly nothing being done about it. Again, really great work. A side point, nowhere near enough people were banned in this game, whether it's Battlefield 5 or Firestorm. Okay? I think that's pretty clear. Moving on, cancelled features. Body dragging, for example. A feature probably shouldn't be in your pre-release hype stuff if it's nowhere near working properly and you end up not getting it into the game. Now, I understand that does happen sometimes, but Battlefield 5 is a special case when you consider how many cancelled things there have been. And also, there's been way more cancelled things than most people know because I follow data miners and stuff. Now, that's not to say DICE are to blame for that because I understand things do get cancelled sometimes, and if they don't announce it and it gets cancelled, that's fine, that's just game development. But it does highlight just how many things didn't make it to this game that were planned for it. And there's got to be reasons for that. Next up, what about the coming soon meme thing? Yes, enough stuff was delayed that much that coming soon was even embraced by the game. Tank body customization, for real, something as kind of small as that, only came out recently for a game released in 2018. When the community jumps on something like coming soon for your game, you must know you're getting something wrong. Next up, lack of RSP or private servers. Once upon a time, a key thing for Battlefield games, only recently came to the game and in a really bare bones state with barely any features. Nobody really wants to use it because it's so poor. You didn't really push it forward in any way, shape or form. It often doesn't work properly, by the way. I know that some people trying to do community events had to just stop and go to Call of Duty recently because the private servers just weren't working properly. Again, really great work. Moving on, the terrible practice range. That was thrown into the game because I think someone let slip there was supposed to be one or something, and then DICE felt like they had to put it in before it was ready, or they had to quickly throw one together and put it in. Terrible, barely anyone uses it, and you couldn't even customize your weapons in it, so what was the point having a firing range where you couldn't use your weapons in the form you're going to use them in multiplayer? And I seem to think that you couldn't alter your aim assist in there, so again, it didn't necessarily function how it would in multiplayer. It was just kind of pointless and bare bones, as I said, so that sucked. Broken Easter eggs, the Stairway to Heaven thing that didn't actually work properly, but I think the DICE were there laughing and watching it on stream and leaving comments in the chat. That was also great. In BF1, we had all the Easter eggs that eventually led to the Peacekeeper. In BF5, we have Easter eggs that we don't know if they're even going to go anywhere at this point. We've not got clarification, and one or some of them still don't work properly, so awesome. Thanks, DICE. Next up, the cancelled 5v5 mode. All the effort went into that. This one maddens me because this originally came from the idea of incursions in BF1, which took forever and then wasn't utilized properly and wasn't featured, I think, in the game fully. It was in a separate thing. Again, it was just poor. So I thought, all right, that's testing for whatever comes in BF5. Then there was a 5v5 mode for BF5 that got cancelled right before it was going to be released for whatever reason. I don't know if many people even really wanted that, but that's another complete waste of resources, so awesome. Next up, remove modes. Goodbye front lines, goodbye domination, goodbye whatever. Permanent modes then reduced to temporary modes, basically modes you can barely ever play. Yeah, there's RSP and you can set up a server, but like, come on, really? We're going to use that as an excuse. So that sucked, and then not having the tech to put these back into the game, we find out you can't have that many modes because the UI can't handle it or something. Again, a AAA title released in 2018. Awesome, great work. What about remove servers? Remove UK servers, remove Middle East servers, remove South African servers, which then are coming back for the pandemic and going away again because God knows, great PR again, well done DICE. Honestly, at this point, this game has had so much removed from it, it's ridiculous. What about the awful anti-cheat? How many people in this game are teaming or cheating or boosting or hacking and just seemingly nothing happens about it? I know some people have been banned, but not enough. There's reports of some people being super high level in their hacking, or people seeing people hacking for months on end and nothing gets done about it, or streamers reporting people cheating or hacking or whatever and nothing gets done about it. This thing that's been going on through the game of we're working on the anti-cheat, we're doing this and that. When did it change? When did anything improve in a tangible manner? Because from what I can tell, it didn't. And Asian servers are just ruined by hacking, so again, well done DICE. Poor communication, lies and vagaries, whether it be through official channels or otherwise, community broadcasts. I believe almost nothing that I read now from them. Everything has to be taken with a pinch of salt. The community managers, if we're to believe what they say, aren't always aware of what's going on. They say something to us, the community responds and they go, hold on, no one told me that. So that's also awesome. I'm sure they feel great about that. Then there's the fact that many key staff have left DICE. There's got to be a reason for that. Go and check the Glassdoor reviews if you want to. Glassdoor.com or .co.uk, or I don't know, you'll find it if you search Glassdoor. It doesn't make for good reading, and it does cover some of the stuff I've talked about in previous videos. It also begs the question, how good are future Battlefield titles going to be if a lot of the key people have left now? It does make me scared for the future. Moving on, what about it being an inaccurate representation of World War II, or a now incomplete journey through World War II? The game was sold as being a full journey through this and that, and we've got basically half of it or whatever. That's pretty awful. There's the terrible use of game changers. DICE or EA are not imaginative with how to use their game changers. I think it's pretty shocking. You could do all sorts of stuff, streaming events or whatever, but you don't. You just use them for the same stuff they've been doing for years, and clearly it's not doing enough. Use them, be creative, announce to the wider gaming public that Battlefield still exists, and maybe they'd want to try it. And there's also the terrible game changers selection system. It's clearly very biased, it's clearly full of cronyism, it's clearly overly friendly. I know that some of the practices are not good. I know of one person being in the game changers program, they do nothing in it now, by the way, from what I can tell, for very questionable reasons, considering they didn't really have anything to offer, they didn't really have a following, but they were quite attractive in, let's say, other ways. I can't go into details, I don't want to get anyone in trouble or shame anyone. If you get invited to the Game Changers program and you want to be in it, then take it, take all the advantages you can get. It's not your fault. You should absolutely do it, whether you deserve it or not. And I must say, this is hearsay, I've only heard this, so it's not a direct accusation, but apparently that happened, and I have it on pretty good authority. It's up to you if you want to believe me or not. Moving on, awful studio politics and practices. I can't get into this, but it's abysmal. People get positions because they're friendly with this person or that person. There's no accountability in place a lot of the time. Some people feel overworked. Some people don't have anywhere near enough to do. Some people aren't utilized properly. It's embarrassing. DICE, you can deny it all you want, but please go and sort yourselves out because it's terrible and I know it's happening. Beyond that, the way that menus and lists are formed, like the assignments, not very good. A lot of the menus don't work very well. They're kind of stuttery. They're better now, but they used to be pretty awful. Not good enough. What about menus not being updated? So when the auto rotation got changed in the game, which by the way was terrible, it was awful they did that, and the community had to go, hey, why is this changed now? We didn't want that. It made the game very, very noob friendly and also unreliable at the same time, so that sucked. And also created a not level playing field, so great. But regardless, when that changed, the menu didn't change. So for a long time, it still said that it didn't affect multiplayer and only affected story or single player, which wasn't true. So that's ridiculous. Why wasn't it altered? It's a very simple thing. Also, actually, what about when DICE changed something with how you crouch or slide or whatever, and it broke the alternative controller scheme on console? That was really poor. Shouldn't happen in a AAA game. What about, as I kind of touched on a little bit earlier, the game not having the tech to introduce all these things that should be really standard for a AAA title, and it's sold as being a AAA title? Not good enough. What about the game not having a CTE or community test environment? Battlefield 1 had one, and it was a savior for the game. Honestly, I think that had a huge impact on how good that game was. Being able to actively test stuff with a mass amount of people and get community feedback is obviously a great thing. Not having it in BF5, either because you didn't want to implement it, or you couldn't, or you didn't want the answers, or you just wanted to work with your own agenda, it was part of the downfall of this game, and it's why we're in this position right now, at least as I say partially. Next time, have a CTE. What about poor vehicle balance? This has been complained about through the whole thing, whether it be planes or tanks or whatever, and you can tie into that a lot of people say using tanks isn't fun because they're only really good from long range, too good from long range a lot of the time, but up close vehicles, they're slow and clunky and vulnerable, so no one really wants to push with them, and it makes the game even slower than it already was. What about the graphical glitches, so all the black pixels in the sky and stuff that still exist and appear sometimes now, and were happening on Aus and Dan, and were one of the reasons listed why it wasn't released on time. Then they were still on the map anyway, just ridiculous. What about visibility issues? We all know that it's hard to see people in this game. You can say it's camouflage or it should be hard to see or whatever. I don't care. I want to see the enemy in a video game because it's not fun a year after release or a year and a half after release being killed by people you can't see. The novelty's kind of worn off, to be honest, with someone lying in supposedly plain sight, but you can't see them and they shoot you with ease. That sucks. It's not a fun game. You can throw into that one specific thing that I've got, flares. On some maps, when people shoot flares into the sky, you can't see them, so you can't shoot them down. Again, really great work. What about poor weapon balance? Let's talk about MMGs and the impact they had on the game. Look, if you liked them or didn't like them, it doesn't matter to me. They clearly had a detrimental impact on the game. Putting a weapon in the game that you have to be stationary for or go prone in a game with bad visibility does not have a good impact on the flow of the game, on the churn in the game, on the gameplay loop. It was a bad idea. I would have brought that up before the game was even released, but alas, they made it to the game anyway. And then you can throw in things like the Type 2A, a gun that fires that fast with that many bullets, kind of ridiculous. There's also the weapon balance changes. How do I put this? There's a guy involved in weapon balance, and a lot of this wasn't his fault, and he's great, okay? What about the poor rewards? The amount of weeks where there was a hat or a tier skip or whatever. The Tides of War thing ended up being basically pointless, and people only played for the chapter rewards. That's where all the weapons ended up anyway in the end. The Tides of War thing was terrible. That could have been great, and it was implemented in an awful fashion where most weeks people didn't care about it. What about the fact the deluxe edition was a waste of money? I don't really need to go into that. It was a complete waste of money. The live service itself was an embarrassment compared to a lot of other games. I don't care if anyone tells me differently. I know it's the case. This is an awful live service. If you don't believe me, look at the fact it's now basically cancelled. Look at the fact that people aren't interested in it. Look at the fact that BF5 turned out the way it is. And then finally, the fact that the live service model even allowed this to happen. With the live service model, DICE didn't have to deliver on content. With the premium model, they did. Premium had its own problems. This game was going to fail either way because it's rotten to the core. Maybe overall we should just look at DICE and say you're the problem, along with EA, and look at the fact the Battlefield games often are broken and then need fixing. It's just that this one couldn't be fixed, and that's not acceptable. Stop releasing games that don't work properly and release a good one. Try that. That'd be great. Maybe then Battlefield will recover. Who knows? If not, maybe this will be like Medal of Honor, which disappeared in 2012. And that's what I have to say. I'm going to end there. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new. I know a lot of people watch these videos without being subscribed, so maybe try it out if you do enjoy the videos. I release loads of content. Like the video if I didn't say that already. All the links to my social media as well, including Patreon, can be found in the description and my pinned comment. Here's the Board of Awesome for the epic people who already support the channel on Patreon. They're all absolute heroes and I love them all deeply, and of course often. If you want to join them on the Board of Awesome, the link to the Patreon page is in the description and my pinned comment. And with all that said, I'm GetGoodGuy, and I'll see you next time. Laters. Teammate type number 8 is the vending machine user. So you know those people that go up to vending machines and hammer them to try to get something to come out, either smashing on them with their fist or just pushing the buttons in as hard as they can? Well, these guys exist in Battlefield 5 as well.